Welcome to Origin Stories. I'm RD.
I'm Parrot.
We're telling stories behind the digital art revolution.
Each week we interview top artists
and live stream with the community.
Let's go. Today is tomorrow's origin story.
Robbie Trevino, welcome to Origin Stories.
Hey.
This is not your first time you've been on a live stream, but never the real deal deep dive into just you as an individual.
Yeah, not like a proper origin story, more like, like you said, palling around on live stream. But I mean, it was awesome then, and I'm sure it's going to be awesome now. So yeah, I'm happy to be here. Thanks for bringing me on, man.
Of course. And the big difference is, of course, we have to start here with a question, the grand question. Robbie Trevino, what is your origin story?
That's a big question. that's a loaded question. Do you want me to start from the beginning, like I once was a fetus, or maybe something a little bit more like, I don't know, like I guess my journey as an artist, right? That's probably the best way to do this. Yeah.
The beautiful thing is you can go back to wherever you want, but I think that sounds pretty appropriate.
Okay. All right. Well, I once was a fetus, but I mean, I guess we all were. So, but no. So yeah, basically, I've been doing the whole art thing professionally for about 10 years. I studied for 4 years, like traditional art school. I was born and raised in Detroit, Michigan. So I'm from the Midwest. I currently reside in Seattle, Washington. Seattle gang, shout out, Parrot, Fewocious. Like there's quite a few of us out here, just to name a few.
Planttdaddii.
Yeah. And then, Justin and, Jaiden, just the list goes on. There's a lot of us haven't met each other like yet, but we're going to. We're just waiting for that full vaccination, I think. But so basically, I started my journey, Detroit, Michigan in 2012. I graduated from art school, and originally I'd gone to art school for industrial design because it's the Motor City, right? And I'm a gearhead. I love my cars. And like, I went to school originally 100% sold on like, I want to do car design because that's all I knew in the Midwest. Like a lot of people were like, art, like, what's that? But like, like math, science, like university studies, cars, like these were hunting, sports. These are like the things, the very like American Midwestern things that I grew up with, and specifically cars, because, it's the Motor City and you got the big 3 auto companies there. That's kind of the only future I saw for myself. And like, so I spent my first year in art school doing the whole industrial design, car design thing. But the more I got into it, the more I was like, my ideas are a little bit bigger and a little less buildable in this world, so to speak. So one thing I kept getting told in school is my teachers were like, dude, this is cool, but this could never exist in reality. And I realized like I was never going to be like doing the things I wanted to do if I kept going down that path. I was just going to be drawing like, everyone thinks they're going to be drawing the next like Dodge Viper or something, but they're going to be drawing like the door handles for the Dodge Caravan, probably for the rest of their life. Like most people, if they were to do that. So as cool as like that whole car design thing is, it just wasn't, I had to go a different way. So I remember I had seen 2 books. One of them was Spectrum Art. And then the other one was Sid Mead, The Art of Sid Mead book. And like, if you know anything about Sid Mead, he's this like legendary designer. He came up with like pretty much the entire look for Blade Runner. He pretty much aesthetically branded cyberpunk, like back from that original Ridley Scott Blade Runner movie. And like, I don't know, I saw that and I was like, I want to do that. Like, I don't know what this is, but if you can make money doing this, I want to do this. So using like a combination of my industrial design education and then leaning full on into like illustration, I was able to kind of like meet somewhere in the middle with like a sort of like illustration, concept art bachelor's. And my school at the time didn't have like concept art. Like we knew what it was, but it was still kind of relatively, for our educators, the faculty that was teaching us, it was very like, we kind of know what concept art is, but like this is illustration. This is fine art. This is a traditional art school. And it's mostly known for its industrial design and automotive programming or education. Sorry. And but like I managed to like kind of leave with like a 75-80% like adequate like concept art portfolio. more illustration, less concept art. And then right out of school, like the first 2 months out of school, I had made this fake Magic the Gathering portfolio that was just the like hire me Wizards of the Coast portfolio. And it was like, I think it was like 6 to 8 cards, like art that I had done. And then like, you know, like examples of like contextually, like how my work could fit into the brand Magic the Gathering, you know? And then I'd actually taken the time I had photoshopped out art on pre-existing cards and like photoshopped my art in, and then like, you know, changed the descriptions, changed the mechanics as best as I could. You know, I even like faked my own signature at the bottom. You know, I basically made fake cards, printed them to size, cut them to size, and put them in like translucent sleeves, like, you know, those like traditional baseball card collections. And I like put this fake binder together of like actual Magic cards with my art on it, so like you could actually see it and hold it. And because I knew at the time, because in Michigan there really wasn't like Comic-Cons or anything at the time, but Indiana, like right next door in Indianapolis, Gen Con was a really big RPG tabletop convention. And I knew that Wizards of the Coast, they make Magic the Gathering and Dungeons and Dragons. I knew that they would be there, you know, giving portfolio reviews like during the summer. And this was like 2 months after I graduated. So I had my fake Magic portfolio. I went there, showed them the goods. They loved it. They were like, all right, you're in. And like, that was an amazing, you know, wow, I can't believe it, you know, like, but what surprised me too, is I remember what they told me is, we like these pieces so much that we want to buy the publishing rights to these. So what I didn't know is you could actually have your personal work acquired and used, like repurposed for the actual IP itself, which is really cool. I don't know if they do that now. This was 2012, and it's almost, you know, 10 years ago. So like, it's a lot different now than it was then. But yeah, to my surprise, they not only hired me, but they were also like, we want to like use your fake portfolio and make them real pieces. So I was like, that's awesome. So, and it was cool too, because as someone who did the whole tabletop RPG, you know, game, like illustration, packaging art for games, like as someone who did that for the first 3 years of their career, I can tell you that like a lot of times to get to sort of like the cream of the crop, like the place you want to aspire to get to the most is usually Wizards of the Coast. Like everyone wants to work on Magic the Gathering. It's this huge IP, really cool. But like a lot of times you have to go through sort of like a stepping stone path of like, I'm going to go through these other sort of, I don't want to say lesser than, but just kind of in terms of perception, like lower tier jobs to get to like the big one. But fortunately, I was able to just go right past all that, right to there, which was cool. And yeah, I did that for a few years. And the one thing that no one told me, like in art school, well, I guess one of many things, because there's a lot that they can't prepare you for, was just how like really going that route in the beginning, like just exclusively trading cards, unless you're like in the tabletop RPG industry, unless you're like number one, which I definitely wasn't if I was a new artist, like this is like supplemental income for like a real, you know, like real money. It's nothing that I could have lived off of. So I struggled pretty hard for the first 2-3 years of this.
Hey, Robbie, can we go back to something real quick?
Yeah.
That I find fascinating.
Sure.
The whole process that you went through that ultimately led to you coming aboard and then using your artwork and being enveloped in their IP, which was like cutting the cards down, going baseball card style in those cases, reworking the attributes. Was that something that was innate to you? Was that something that you did? Did you view that as like a grand leveling up process where like, I'm going to take the biggest swing I've ever took before at this specific thing? How did that fit into your trajectory before that?
Well, I mean, so like I had seen like I can't take full credit for the idea of like displaying your work in context as a portfolio, because I definitely saw people doing stuff like that. And I've even seen some fake Magic cards and stuff being used among other products and things, like during like senior thesis shows or like, you know, this exam for this semester, you know, like I saw other people doing that. For me, it just made sense from like a business portfolio marketing sort of view, where it's like it's one thing to like produce the art, you know, that says, I would like to work at X, Y, and Z. But it's another thing to like display it within perfect context, you know, like, which is what, I don't know. It seemed like a no brainer. It's like, how do you convince the people at a company to hire you, right? You literally slap them and knock them over the head as hard as you can with like, look at what my actual art will look like on your product. Like, it seems so obvious. It's like you have to, you literally have to just show someone the idea, whether it's good or bad, for them to like truly get it. I think a lot of times, because a lot of times you can say something out loud, but then you see it. And you go, oh, that was like not a good idea. Or like, oh, that's better than I thought it would be. Like, sometimes you just got to see it to really like understand it, versus like, well, I can kind of show you maybe, you know, how I could fit into this. I wanted to show them the most literal black and white, like, look, here's my stuff on your cards. What do you think? And yeah, it felt like a big swing for sure. Cause I remember, it's silly to think about, but like, since it was your first, especially when you're fresh faced and starry eyed and you don't hate the world yet, right? And you're just like, everything's wonderful. You know, like, you go into it and without having any prior experience, like, yeah, I was like terrified of rejection. And like, this would have been a face-to-face rejection, not like an email. This would have been another human telling you, yeah, no, take a hike, you know, or, you know, maybe it wouldn't be that brutal, but like, it would be, you know, it's, it felt very like, it felt like there was a lot riding on this, but I was like, with most things, and like, we'll get to in a little bit, like with the whole NFT thing, it's like, you just gotta like, you gotta bet big to win big, basically. So it's just like, I'm similar to the NFT thing, like with this move, Robbie's going to apply to Wizards. I was like all in. And I didn't have a backup plan. I was like, if this fails, I guess I'll just go back to like, you know, working at the hardware store or like whatever, and then figure it out from there. But
car door handles.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Right. And like, what's funny is like the first 2 years I was on this thing, it was the money wasn't there because I left art school. For the viewers who aren't from the States, I'll tell you now, we have a serious student loan debt problem here in the States. It is, I mean, most people from here know it, but like, if you're foreign to this country, you don't know. But yeah, I left with a lot of debt. I left with like 100K in debt for an art education. I wasn't like a lawyer, you know, like I wasn't even guaranteed employment. Like, some of the people's senior theses that I was going to school with, they were like, you know, doing paper mache like collages, and I was like, we were all like, are any of us going to get hired? Like, whatever. And that's where I was like, I found a business that had an actual product and a following, and I was like, I'm going to go for that because that's what sells. And the art's cool. I don't really play the game. I don't play D&D or Magic. I've played a little bit of D&D, but I'm not like I didn't get into the art side of this because I love the product. I got into it more because I saw an opportunity to draw things that interested me, but also I saw something that would actually pay you money at the time, because I didn't see, you know, there weren't like NFTs or anything like that, right? So it was just like, how do you get paid to draw this kind of stuff? So yeah, basically I just went for broke. Unfortunately, it worked out, but because of how slow like it was in the beginning, like, because my skills weren't as strong as they are now. I was a lot slower. I didn't have a client list built up over the years. I didn't have like established rates, and the rates that I was kind of putting out for myself were way below what I should have been charging. But without someone there to tell you any of this, you kind of go in blind and you figure it out as you go along. So for the first 2 years, man, it was rough. I mean, we're talking like constantly clients wouldn't pay me, even though I had contracts saying they would. I got paid for a book cover once, like almost 3 years after I had done the cover. And like legally they were able to get away with it because it was this weird combination of like, we don't pay you until something gets published, and it just didn't get published until 3 years later. And then at one point the company went out of business, and like, you know, they went bankrupt and they had to sell their assets to someone. I remember doing that job and never hearing back. And then like 3 years later, I just saw like a check in the mail, and I was like, what the fuck is this? And I was like, oh, this is extra money to me now. But at the time it was like, I can't make rent almost, you know, like that's just how that was for like a few years until an old art school buddy called me up and he said, listen, I work at Microsoft now. Like, I'm a hiring lead. I work for this AAA game company, Xbox Studios. We're working on this thing. I got to give you an art test and I got to like do my due diligence here, but like, I really want to bring you in on this. And I was like, man, AAA games, like it's not RPG stuff, but like it'd be a salary, it'd be benefits. I get to move to another state. I've never lived in the Pacific Northwest at the time. Right. So I was like, I'm all in, like, so I did the test, got the job, moved out to Washington, the Seattle area. And I lived in Redmond, which is a city like just outside of Seattle proper. But like, I lived in Washington, and for 2 years I worked on this AAA game called Project Spark, which is before Microsoft had acquired what was it? Minecraft. Before they'd acquired Minecraft, they were like, we want to create like our own version of Minecraft. And that's what Project Spark is. It's sort of like a world building. It's very niche. It's like a world building game where you're given packs of assets, and then you're given like a world building engine with a bunch of tools, and you kind of redistribute those assets and rework them and mold them and warp them and smash them together like kits. You kind of do whatever you want with them. And, you can get different DLCs, supply different, themes. Like there's a sci-fi pack, the fantasy pack, the modern pack, the skateboarding pack, the Halloween pack, it just goes on. So we basically built this entire thing. And then like with a lot of games, I don't know how many, I know you had Raf Grassetti on here not too long ago, but like, I don't know how far he got into the whole, how games work, but you can work on something and then it can die just as quickly as it was born. And so by the time we were ready to launch this game, Microsoft had actually acquired Minecraft. And at that point we were like, my contract was ending, and I already knew my job was like on borrowed time. But when I saw that, I was like, man, do they even care about this project anymore? And they kind of didn't. You could tell like their marketing dropped, like they weren't putting it out anymore, that like this game's coming out, and so we had a launch, and it did all right. The loyal following loved it and followed it, but the masses had no idea that it launched because everyone was too focused on actual Minecraft. Like Mojang sold to Microsoft. It was a big deal. And like we kind of got overshadowed. And then eventually, I think something like 6 months later, the whole project just got shut down. And by that time, I'd already moved on to another game, another project. But it was a really cool first experience into what was it like to work in a studio versus remotely. When you're working with a team of people that are way better than you are, you just get better. Like by proxy, you just soak up the knowledge. And you anytime I got a job in a studio, I was always hoping I'd be the worst person there, because then I could just learn from everyone. If you're the best person going into a studio, it's not to say you won't learn something from that team, but if you're the worst, you're definitely going to learn a lot more, and you're just going to soak up their knowledge. So it was a great learning experience. It also taught me a lot about the industry and the things that I liked and didn't like. And then after that, I had done 2 more studio jobs, and one of them, not a lot of people know this, but I love talking about this because it's so, when I tell you this, you're going to be like, what the fuck? You did what for a year? What? I worked on a mobile game for a year at this studio called Glue Mobile. Awesome studio. Love them. I still have friends from that studio. The game though was the Nicki Minaj game. I worked on, and I could show you, I don't know what I'm allowed to show legally, but if I could, I would just roll out the whole portfolio and be like, this is all the stuff I made for the Nicki Minaj game. But basically for a year, yeah, it's the same company that made, it's a mobile game. It's the same company that made the Kim Kardashian game. And
Robbie, why is this not leading on your bio? Your bio is SuperRare, Netflix, Wizards of the Coast, and Nicki Minaj needs to be in there somewhere.
So yeah, basically, I worked on the Nicki Minaj game. I did a lot of props and environment work and some outfits, but mostly I was mostly on the world building side of it, the physical world. This was an isometric top down, very, very cell shaded, anime style looking game. And yeah, it was about Nicki Minaj, and you're an aspiring rapper who becomes friends with Nicki Minaj, and she takes you under her wing, and then there's all these beefs that you got to squash with rival rappers, and there's it's so funny. But basically, yeah, I worked on this game, and again, like what's interesting though is when I worked on this game, so this is where like we start to get into like Robbie. We're not quite to the NFT land yet, but we're to the part where Robbie finds an artistic identity. So this is a pretty pivotal period for me. So when I was on the Nicki Minaj game though, I had kind of emotionally checked out of like the whole art thing. Like, not to say that the game was really cool in its own right, and the team was I've never worked with a more like socially connected team. Like we were hanging out every Friday as a team, Saturday, like we camped together, we did all kinds of stuff. You don't always get that with your coworkers, but we were really close. So what was cool though is like, so just before I had gotten that job, I had a lot of aspirations to join. I really wanted to get a job at Bungie. Like coming off of that Microsoft contract, I already knew like, I was scheduled to be like laid off at this time, and legally they have an interesting, like they have like required waiting periods between contracts. So like I knew I had to take about half a year off before I could reapply for that same job. So basically in my mind, I'm leaving Microsoft and going on to the next thing.
Mm-hmm.
And my plan was to go to Bungie because all my friends were working on Destiny. And I was like, it's my destiny to work on Destiny. Right. And like, so I made a portfolio and everything. It didn't work out. I think I was just burnt out, and I was kind of emotionally exhausted. The whole thing of like, this was one of those all chips in thing, like like Wizards of the Coast moves to Bungie that didn't work out. Because of that, I was like, I need a break. So I found, just to pay my bills, I found the studio job with the Nicki Minaj team, and that was cool. But it was such a clock in, clock out, go home thing. There was no passion really. Like, unfortunately, it was all gone. So for a year, I just focused on other stuff for like a year, like while doing my job, but really I wasn't doing art beyond that, and before that I just lived and breathed art. It was all about it. So basically I would say I was employed, but I took a year off of art, like on an emotional level. So I was pretty checked out of art. And when I came back to it so my Nicki Minaj job ended, and then I had one more studio gig. And I was working, it was a remote position, pre-COVID, right? So remote position was really hard to come by. Casino games job. I was doing the packaging, like the actual physical packaging that goes on land-based slot machines, like the big cabinets, like all the art that wraps around it. I would do that packaging. I would do the UI and the UX of the actual game screen itself, because slot machines have come a far way from just this. We're talking full digital experiences, on your phone, or like the physical cabinets, right? So I found this job through a friend, and it paid a lot better than that job that I had. And it was remote. And I was like, that's kind of interesting. And again, I wasn't emotionally invested in art. So I was like, oh, it's another day job. Again, right? All these things I'm describing to you don't sound like the Robbie that you know, because they're not, right? They were all means to an end. It was just money. And so I was very creatively unfulfilled. But I think what happened is, after a year of the Nicki Minaj thing and then going on to this casino games thing, I began... And maybe it's because the pace of casino games was a lot slower than sort of the aggressive AAA mobile game grind, where you're crunching and you're working like 60 hours a week, and you're just always working, and you're just exhausted, right? Like, casino games moved a lot slower. So because of that, I had a lot more bandwidth and a lot more energy. And after a year of being off, I started to like get that energy back a little bit. And at that point, I was kind of like, okay, I got my casino games job that no one's ever heard of. People know I've done magic for a little bit, but like I've been pretty quiet on social media. So this was like 2016 now, right? Fast forward from 2012 to 2016.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, I'm just going to start drawing stuff that interests me again. And maybe it'll sell, maybe it won't, but like, fuck it, dude. I'm just going to draw whatever I want. And, I already got my one job. And if it doesn't, if everyone laughs at me or whatever, that's fine. They already laugh at me for, doing whatever. So like, I'm like, okay. So I just start drawing the weird fleshy stuff that you see. And like, I even remember the name of like it started out as a series. It didn't have a name attached to it, anything. I was like, well, I need to name this something when I upload it to social media. So I just called the series, I literally called it Your Mom. Like part 1, Your Mom, part 2. And people were just like, what is this Your Mom stuff? Like, does she have friends? Like, what is this? Like, and just like, and that was me just like going, listen, guys, like I'm just experimenting. I'm just trying to find my voice, and I'm just trying to find something that's interesting, that I enjoy doing. And whether like I'm not doing it for anyone else other than me. So, yeah, that's why I'm not doing the super photorealistic, like high fantasy painted stuff that me for from Magic the Gathering. I'm just going to do, I'm going to do the stuff that interests me. And I pulled from that old like visual library of like the old experiences that got me excited, the media that I used to consume, like a lot of anime, right? A lot of like, a lot of Miyazaki stuff, Ghibli, a lot of Otomo, everything from Berserk, Gundam, Evangelion, like my giant robots, like the martial arts anime type stuff too, like Cowboy Bebop, like a lot of that stuff. And then a lot of the old comics that I used to consume, like stuff from Sergio Topi, stuff from Moebius, like French and Italian, like just like old European comics, right? Like that stuff I all consumed like as a kid, and then as a teen too. And I just had kind of forgotten it somewhere along the way. And yeah, remembering all that, I was just drawing stuff that kind of was reminiscent of that, but was still my own thing. And I think one thing that was also showing up in my work, and this is something that's interesting because a lot of people go like, how do you describe your work? Like it's visceral, it's mechanical, but it's also biomechanical. Like I just call it flesh tech. I've just dubbed it flesh tech. That's like my own little personal branding. But like, where does this visual library come from? So when you growing up in like the Detroit area, you see a lot of urban decay. There's a lot of beautiful parts of Michigan and a lot of beautiful parts of Detroit, but it didn't get a lot of the stereotypes for no reason either. There are some, like anywhere, there's the good and the bad, right? But like there's sort of like a beauty in a lot of like the visuals that you see, which for me was I saw a lot of rusted out cars with vines and foliage sprouting out from the engine bay. I was seeing old rundown like mechanical factories, because remember this is the Motor City, right? This is where like the Industrial Revolution was like at its heyday, right? Mass production of cars, and heavy machinery. But those days are over. So now what you're left with is all these sort of skeletal remnants of that time, and nature is sort of taking it back. So you have the mechanical mixed with the biological, right? So it's almost this biomechanical sort of marriage of visuals. And I think that's where a lot of it came through, even though what I do it's more anatomical than it is.
I was going to say you
nature based.
You took the rusted out frames of cars and made it bodies.
Well, see, the thing is, right, that is sort of the anatomy of a car, right? Like if a car was a living, breathing thing, which it's sort of almost becoming with nature sort of growing into it, it does become like those pipes and, manifold and, camshafts and engine blocks. Like those are the intestines and the liver and the heart. And, like that's the anatomy of a car. And it was really fascinating to me seeing basically the guts of machines. And like
this actually makes so much sense.
Does it?
Having appreciated your work for a little while now and toured through everything.
Yeah.
Even unearthed some different stuff that I wasn't aware of. This makes sense. Some of the almost like dissections, you take sometimes a slice out, or you have that view of the inside. It does in a way feel like you're exploring the anatomy, just like you might explore the engine or the frame or some aspect of a machine.
Yeah, I mean that's basically all it was, and it was a fascination because, yeah, I don't know, just visually I find it appealing. Like there's a lot of it's weird the things that humans are drawn to, and like this is a whole. I don't want to get too far into this because this is like a whole other discussion. But like in terms of design philosophy, there is design, like aesthetically pleasing design is a universal language like math. Once you understand like how it works, what the human mind perceives as visually stimulating, you can take that formula and apply it to any subject matter you like. That's what I learned. I learned a lot about design over the years through industrial design and through, just problem solving for client needs as a professional. And I was able to take a lot of those rules and apply them to the subject matter that interests me. Because a lot of the times people look at my work and they'll be like, I don't know what the fuck I'm looking at, but I like it. Why do you like it though? Well, because I'm creating something it's aesthetically pleasing to you, despite the fact that the subject matter is weird, fleshy, tribal, mechanical abominations. That's not something that everyone enjoys. But when someone who doesn't enjoy it goes, this thing's popping and I don't know why, it's like, I do. So that's a whole other discussion. But what I'm getting at is this was sort of how I got to my point with my voice. Is I just drew the stuff I wanted to draw. And the more and more people looked at it, the more of a positive reception I got. The more people went, dude, I enjoy this more than your magic stuff. The things that have this pedigree behind them, the things that on paper should make you more valuable and more popular and more appealing as an artist. When I started drawing the stuff that I loved, it showed. It always shows. Nothing will be more sincere and resonate more with an audience, with anyone, than something that speaks to you. Because if you don't love it, chances are no one else will, right? But when you love it, you can always tell. It's like when someone phones in a performance versus gives it their Oscar-winning all, right? Their Academy Award-winning all. So yeah, I don't know. When enough people go, dude, I'd buy this as a book, you go, shit, man, I think I got to make a book. And so basically I started delving into, I started attaching writing to all of these weird experiments. And I began to realize that I am telling a story here. It started out as an experiment and it's become a story. And for the longest time, I was making no money off of this, none at all. It was literally just, it was almost like living for the weekend, right? Where you're clock watching and the test is almost over, school's almost out, and then it's Friday, bitch. And then you go off and it's party for the next 3 days. That's how it was for many years doing this personal project on the side. I would do my client work. And then as soon as I was done, I was like, okay, now the good stuff. And the only reason it was like that was because, no one was paying me for it. I didn't have a way to monetize it. And the only reason I wanted to make money off of it was just to create runway to keep working on that thing. It's always been about just loving the art. Especially when you find that thing that you love, which I was fortunate enough to, then it becomes all consuming and you're thinking about it all the time. You're at the gym, or you're taking a shit, or you're about to go to bed, or you're on a walk. You're anywhere but your desk going, and now the magic happens, right? And that's when, and if you're thinking about it, then if you're taking your work home with you, it's you've got something special and it's something that you love. So yeah, basically I fell into this project, by accident, trying to just draw things that I found visually appealing. The response was great. Even if the response wasn't great, I probably would have kept leaning into it. But when the response was that strong, I just you ride this energy and you pick up this momentum, and I just kept leaning into it. And I became the guy that just draws the weird fleshy stuff. And basically I started attaching writing to the story because I started to imagine, I began to realize it was almost like I was just sort of running into and interacting with these creatures and these locations that I was creating. And it was almost like I was interacting with them. I was going on my own journey to this weird world that didn't yet have a name, with all these oddities that existed. And I thought, what if, what if we could structure this in a way where it was this story was about a protagonist who basically interacted with foreign life, on a foreign planet. It was very ethereal, it was otherworldly. And, it doesn't necessarily have to be a book, but what if we could just link these sequentially and narratively with bits of writing, So I began to do writing. Is laughably embarrassing at the beginning. It always is. I think I don't know about you, but a lot of times I do this. I'll look at something that I've never done before, and I'll just, for some reason, walk up to it like I'm some kind of savant and be like, I can do this. And then I just suck at it really badly. And then I get good, right? It's or I get better, right? I gain competence. It's It's the whole draw 1,000 bad drawings to get to the good ones. Finally, you got to do a lot of bad stuff to get to the good stuff. And even then you're still going to do bad stuff. And like, I don't know. Yeah. I, with a lot of help from one of my roommates and then one of my good buddies, I learned a lot about writing. I began to like find the story. And what I realized is, and this is where we start to get more into like current NFT space and, you know, like my career as it stands now. Like I began to realize I was telling this story about like, if you could imagine this as a book now, right? It is a visual diary about a traveler that crash lands on a distant planet. It's not an astronaut NFT, people. I mean, it is technically, but it's actually more, it's the traveler, right? Crash lands on this distant planet. The planet is called Numinous. That's the name of the book, Numinous. I didn't make up the word. Someone else made it up. But basically, essentially what it means, it's like otherworldly, sort of like transcendent in like a spiritual sense. Like it's another ethereal plane of existence. So that's what Numinous is. It's this world. It's this sort of all-encompassing world. It sort of exists. And it kind of mindlessly pulls from anything that gets close enough into its gravitational well. It pulls things in and it begins to rearrange and, you know, disassemble and reassemble and reimagine and stretch and contort and, you know, and it does what it does in a mindless, unencumbered sort of way. It doesn't have, there's no malice, there's no thought. It's not really sentient per se. It just kind of does what it does. Like, not to sound like insensitive or anything, but it does what like a cancer would do. Essentially, it just kind of exists and does what it does. It's not really good or bad. It's just, it's going to do what it's going to do. And if you're in its wake, like you become a part of it. And that's what happened. You know, this traveler crash lands and they're like, where am I at? Like, what's with all these crazy body parts being rearranged? And, you know, things are where they shouldn't be and things are small and things are big. And like, what is all this? And imagine them recording these events in a book, field journal. And like, I have the book with me. I can like flip through it. Actually, you know what? Here, why not? Yeah. So just real quick. So like book, right? See if I can get a good view of that. And just basically, right, it's the idea is, you know, the traveler, you know, they crash land in this spaceship. They crash land on this planet, right? And they basically begin to, you know, document, you know, I'm coming across, you know, strange ruins, you know, like what's this all about, right? And then they begin to like encounter wildlife, you know, and they record their interactions, you know, and sort of like it's sort of like, it's almost like a sequential book, like a graphic novel meets I think was it Michelangelo or it was Leonardo da Vinci had those like anatomical studies, you know, of like plants and humans, you know, sort of like, yeah, like it's a visual diary. It's a field journal, you know, it's a sketchbook, it's a bunch of things, right? But it's the thoughts of the traveler, right? And this is the first of probably like 4 or 5 books. Ideally, it'd be cool to put them all into one ancient tome, you know, like a big 500-page thing. But by the time I finish it, everyone's going to be dead and no one cares. So the idea is release it in installations, which I did in we're jumping forward a little bit. I don't want to jump forward too much, but in 2019, Emerald City Comic-Con, it's the Comic-Con out here on the West Coast or on Pacific Northwest. I had done a limited print run to sell this book. I'd actually made enough content for one book. And the idea was to do pre-COVID, since you were guaranteed to have these conventions every year. The thinking was I tell in installations, book 1, book 2, book 3, and I release each book like one a year. So it's like an obtainable goal and it'll keep people interested. So by the time, you know, the 5-year mark comes around or whatever, and I've got 5 books worth of content, maybe I could crowdfund like a big one, and that could be like the grand volume that you own, you know, like a big collection. But you know, as life does, plans were different. So, you know, I had to stop at book 1 because COVID kind of threw me for a loop, and a bunch of other things last year that we can get into. But basically what I've come to realize is the traveler that I'm writing about it's me. Like I'm a it's a metaphor for me. Like I'm the traveler, because the traveler in this book eventually, I don't want to give away too much, but it's a story about them interacting with this world, realizing they're not going to go home, right? Because you crash land on a planet and you want to like send out the SOS, the beacon, and then get extracted. You want to leave.
Mm-hmm.
It's about accepting that it's like you didn't think you were meant to be here, but you are meant to be here. You're not leaving either. You're part of the world now. And eventually they become completely, we'll say, numinized into the world. But like the traveler, the traveler is accepting that they were always meant to be here. I'm accepting that I was always just meant, this is the artist I was always meant to be.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds really cheesy, but it's true. By leaning into this and just accepting that this is the stuff that I enjoy and that everyone sees I enjoy and wants me to continue, like, yeah, the traveler is a metaphor for me becoming the artist that I was always meant to be. And it somehow became a book project. And like, that's a universe that I continue to expand. And like my whole I had a nifty drop last April 18th. Mm-hmm. And that was focused completely on this. Like I even had physical copies of the book attached. And I have another one, not to like plug myself or anything on here, but July 8th, a return drop is happening if anyone's interested. And we can get into that a little bit more, but like, yeah, basically like I'm expanding that universe, and like outside of platforms and outside of like specific like scheduled event drops, basically I'm just dedicated to like expanding this universe as much as I can, because this thing existed before the NFT space mm-hmm. as we know it currently. And it's going to exist after. It's just the current vehicle for the story I'm telling. But basically, yeah, like I started out as like a concept artist illustrator in a sort of generic, more like, you know, people knew who I was, but really you couldn't pick me out from a lineup, to, you know, I went through some stuff emotionally, like took some time off, came back, remember what I liked to do, and made the decision a lot of people don't make, which is I'm just going to focus on the stuff that I enjoy, because it's hard for people to do that when they look at what is guaranteed to help, you know, you succeed, air quotes, you know, financially, make money, pay your bills, stay afloat. And when you're doing the thing that isn't proven, it's a gamble. Like with the NFT thing, right? The whole, like, it's just, we're so new to all this that it's really hard for a lot of people to go, I don't think I'm all in on this, because it's too much of a risk. But high risk, high reward, right? Like,
very true.
And that's what I did that a lot of people don't do, is I'm going to just do what I want to do. And it's just paid off amazingly.
So you broke yourself and your trajectory down there in very simple terms. You said you were concept art illustrator, and then you went through some stuff, and then you pursued what you really wanted to do. Do you think it took you going through some stuff to come out on the other side and be willing to go all in?
Yeah, I do, because I had just seen enough people I had seen enough people in the industry that I had been in at the time when I made this decision, which was AAA games. I was still doing the magic stuff, but again, like I said, that's supplemental income. That's mm-hmm. not a 9 to 5. For me, it wasn't. For some people, it is. For me, it was more like you get a card a month, do that on the weekends, and then you get your 9 to 5 that you really go ham mm-hmm. on, right? But I saw people burn out always. Anyone who I know that has been at a company for like 15 years, I go like, fucking how did you keep doing that for 15 years? I mean, the answer is, you know, obvious stuff like stability, and like, you know, sometimes it's easy to get comfortable and complacent somewhere. But for me, I saw so many people leave, you know, unfulfilled. They leave because they were so unfulfilled and so unhappy for so long. And I think I saw it quicker than other people. And yeah, I don't know, maybe I was being like a sensitive little baby or something, but something about like, you know, getting rejected for the first time by like, you know, Bungie, because mm-hmm. that's pretty much the first company that said like no to me. And they didn't really say no to me. They just kind of blew me off, which is fine. But like, I don't know what it was. It was a combination of just being burnt out, seeing other people burn out, and then like getting rejection. That just kind of want to go, let me reevaluate where I'm at with all this, because I'm starting to realize like I've gone so far down this wormhole of like being a thing that I thought I had to be because it was a safe bet, and doing the kind of art that I thought I had to do, that I just kind of lost my identity in all of it. And then when I left and came back with fresh perspective, and I literally saw what the industry was doing with fresh eyes, and went, oh, like this is like just a sea of homogenized nonsense. Like, no offense to the people that love that kind of stuff, but it wasn't for me. Like, it all looked like it was made by the same artist, the same maybe 2 or 3 artists, but it was actually thousands of people. And I went, it just wasn't for me. So what is for me? Well, there isn't really a market for it, but I guess I'll just draw the stuff I want to draw and put it out there and see if people liked it. People ended up loving it. People ended up loving it so much that, like, those same companies that only hired me to do like Magic the Gathering, like, and do it in this course style, came back to me and went, we want some of that. And now I get hired, when I do get hired for client work, and I've been fortunate, I've gotten to work on a lot of really cool stuff for clients just before the whole NFT thing. And even during the NFT thing, I'm still working on interesting client stuff. But I'd say the 2 years before I got into NFTs, before where we're at presently, so 2019 and 2020, those were the years like bands that I adored were finding me, you know, like Magic the Gathering, who had done things one way, one style for almost 10 years with me, were like, do your own personal style, you know, like we're going to start exploring alternate art styles, you know, like Netflix came to me and was like, we want you to work on Love, Death, and Robots. You know, the band Tool came to me, this band that I listened to when I was like 14, 15.
That's my favorite connection right there. The Robbie
yeah, man. Hell yeah, dude. Adam Jones found me at, him and his wife live in LA. And in 2019, pre-COVID, I was demoing, there's a big platform called ArtStation. I was demoing like for ArtStation at this thing called Lightbox Expo in the Pasadena, I think it was Pasadena Expo Center in LA. And I was demoing there. And I guess Adam was just like in the crowd, Adam Jones from Tool. And he saw me and he liked my stuff. And then he slid into those DMs on Instagram like a couple weeks later and was like, hey, Tool's doing a reunion, like a 13 years in the making, like reunion tour. You want to do some posters for us? And I was like, no, that sounds awful. Get fucked. No, I was like, yeah, dude, sign me up. This is amazing. And so I got to work with Tool on stuff. And then, you know, like, and that led to a whole bunch of other things after that. And like at one point, I don't think I had told you this, but at one point, just before COVID lockdown in March, Smashing Pumpkins came to me and they were like, we want you, we're releasing a new album and we want you to do like we're doing like a graphic novel to go with the album. You want to do the graphic novel? I couldn't at the time, but yeah, like as soon as like at least one musician finds you, they all start to find you. Cause then later in 2020, like end of the year, Childish Gambino came to me for a thing that I can't talk about yet, but like, I don't know what happened. It was like a snowball effect, right? But like all of these opportunities, which in my opinion are far more interesting than like having bragging rights to be like on the credit list along with 1,000 other people for insert whatever big AAA project you're working on, right? Like I got those opportunities because I had like established this brand, this voice, this thing. And I never would have gotten that. Tool would have never come to me if I had just been the same artist that I was. Like I found my own voice and that art resonated with them. So like, again, like the payoff has been immense. Like it doesn't only creatively fulfill me just to draw what I want to draw, but like I'm actually making money off of it. You know, these jobs don't come, you know, one after another every day. Like I'd say it's gotten to a pretty healthy point that I get them pretty regularly, but yeah, like I don't know, like to paraphrase, to get away from the work that I didn't want to do for certain companies, I did my own thing. And then it was so appealing that those same companies came back to me and they were like, do that for us. And so,
which is a pretty amazing cycle when you think about it.
It's very rewarding because up until that point, I was only paid to look like someone else. I was the budget version of someone else. We can't afford, I don't know, we'll use a random, we can't afford Jamie Jones or Dave Raposa or KK Kataki or, you know, whoever. But, you know, you're available. Like, you think you can match this style? And I'm pretty flexible with my style. So I was like, yeah, sure. But you're not getting paid to do you. Like you're almost like a wrist to a certain point, or you're sort of like runner up. You're like the B list, right? It's not that I was offended, but it's not as rewarding as going, we trust you and your vision, do what you do. That's why we want you here. And like, that is such a more rewarding position to be in. And then take that and times it by 1,000. And that's what like the NFT space is basically, is like it's that times 1,000. Cause yeah, I've never once have I been asked, produce an NFT or like be part of this project and, look like this other person who we couldn't afford. Nope. It's like, we're here because we want you for you. And like, again, it's nothing but rewarding. So yeah, man. And now here we are.
So, okay. First, never forget your musical career began with Nicki Minaj. Just want to make sure we're clear.
I never forgot.
Okay. And let's get to NFT, right? Let's get to that term. Where does that term first cross your radar?
So it was early January, mid-February. I remember I was working a concept art job. It was a world building thing for Magic the Gathering. And it was like a 3-4 week creative sprint. So I was grinding on this thing, and some old friends of mine who had given me, I don't use 3D much in my portfolio, like really at all. Honestly, I mostly just draw everything by hand, but some of my buddies who I've been really good friends with, and you might actually know one of them, David Tilton, shout out to David Tilton. He's one of the two. Him and this other guy, Tyler, they were messaging me being like, hey man, NFTs. And I'm like, yo, like what? Like I'm making real money over here. What's this NFT nonsense? Like I had seen some stuff with Beeple, and like I think I had seen a story. I remember this is like January, February. I had seen a story too about like a millionaire who had like lost like their seed phrase to like like a hard wallet or something, and like they were like it was like millionaire accepts losing 25 million in Bitcoin or something, and I was just like, oh, all right. But that, again, that's like, that's that crypto stuff. I just make art and I'm too busy to do any research on this. But
my favorite was the story. I think it might've been in England or somewhere else where someone paid an absurd amount of money, like $10 million, to try to convince a city to let them excavate a dump where they thought that a hard drive existed or something. Anyway, because they lost some absurd quantity of Bitcoin. Anyway,
isn't that crazy that it all just exists on like a little like flash drive too, basically? But so like, yeah, they kept poking me about it, and I was like, I don't know what this is, but I don't have time. And I think when it really hit me is when I saw it was Mad Dog Jones's first like really big drop, which I think was like end of February, like mid to end of February. And I was like, this is real. And that's when I started talking to my friends. And I think I was maybe 2 weeks is all it took just before the big wave, like the tidal wave, right? The tsunami. I put in my application to like a Foundation. Well, no, I got an invite to Foundation. But it was Nifty Gateway and SuperRare. And I remember like making my video, and it was like shot 20, like take number 20 or whatever. I was in like the least dirtiest part of my apartment, and the video was awful. It was like a bad upshot angle, and I looked like a serial killer, and it was like in someone's creepy basement or whatever. And I was like, this is never gonna work. And like that's like the first time it came onto my radar. And then I remember doing the thing that I would do where I would tweet out at people, and I tweeted out at like Tommy Kimmelman and Nifty Gateway a couple of times, with my work, tagging them and being like, what do you guys think? Pretty cool, huh? Be cool to see on your site. And then Tommy got up into my DMs. Cause remember, again, this was when like the hype wasn't, at like its critical mass. And like, I think March was like the peak. So like, again, I was about 2 weeks in, which in NFT times is like a year, right? So like I was in 2 weeks before kind of everyone else was. And that was just enough time to like get in before like the mass influx. And at that point, March had rolled around and it was like a feeding frenzy. And that's when it was like, I'm in like 5 different Discords, and I'm talking to people in different time zones, and I'm not sleeping. And it's like, it feels like one long convention, right? Where you go to a con and you're running on like 2 hours of sleep, and all your friends are just like, chug the coffee, let's go, dude. And like no one sleeps, but you don't care because you're just riding this energy. And it was like that for like a couple months there. But yeah, like initially it began with a couple of friends being like, you should do this. And I'm like, that's not real. And then like, no, it turns out it's very real, and it's really amazing. But yeah, that is how NFTs got on my radar.
Amazing. And okay, so let's talk about something on SuperRare specifically, because it's also, well, our paths had crossed and then this happened, but I always thought, I always remember, I think I always will remember Robbie Trevino for this first, and then many things after. But we had talked, and then you had let me know, and I think I had seen peripherally, and then it all clicked for me, the avatars.
Yeah.
And so, you know, you had done Ninjas first, and then BakaArts, and then made the decision. I'm like, this is incredible. Would love, you know, high respect for your art. Of course, I would love to explore that. And then all of a sudden, RD has a new avatar. So I'll never forget it. I thought that whether it was conscious, whether it was subconscious, whether it was somewhere in between, you know, you putting your art out there in the sense of a unique take on the fiber of a persona, of a personality, putting your Robbie Trevino stamp on that, and then passing that over as an NFT to that person on SuperRare, I thought was just so brilliant at the time, and even still now.
Oh, thanks, man. Yeah, I mean, I would say it was definitely, it was pretty strategic, I would say. Like, it was rewarding. I never work on something that I'm not gonna, I try to think as like pragmatically as I can with everything. And the two things are like, will this elevate like my brand in some way, in like a meaningful way? And will I be fulfilled creatively by it? Like, will it mean something to me, like emotionally? And usually those two things, it's not always a one for one like hit on those 2 bullet points, but like that's generally the ballpark that I try to go for. And yeah, like I had seen crypto avatars. I mean, I had seen at the time, you know, there weren't apes, but there were crypto punks, you know, and those were, you know, those were Lamborghinis for the rich, right? They were completely unobtainable at the time. I mean, I have a punk now, but I didn't at the time. And, you know, I thought like, well, avatars are cool. People, you know, I see people, when someone has an avatar, it's their identity within the space, you know, it's a big deal. It's basically like the face that you put on for the world to see. And I had started talking. Yeah, Ninja was one of these collectors, you know, knew I was, he saw that I was new to the space. He was very welcoming. And, you know, he told me like one of like the best ways that, you know, you could probably get your work out there, and that's like good advertising, is if you do like commissions for someone. And that's where we came up with the idea together. I was like, well, what if we gave you a new avatar, you know, like, because I see you're really into like ninjas, but like, you know, I think you could have a cooler avatar. So why don't I just make a little avatar for you? And he's like, sure. So, you know, he gave me, oh my gosh, can you hear that? There is, okay. My thin walls in this apartment complex. I got some screaming children outside. But if you can't hear that, it's all good. So basically this ninja, he basically came to me, and, you know, we agreed, it's like, let's get you a new avatar. You know, it'll be like a cool avatar for you. It'll be a little bit of cash for me. It'll be promotion for like the Robbie brand, you know, and we can kind of like, you know, like, and I can provide you with this, you know, unique, like you said, portrayal of you as a character, you know, which is meaningful to them. And it's cool to you because you get to show someone, well, this is how I view you. This is my interpretation of you. Right. So it's a very personal commission. I think doing avatars, which are basically portraits, is a little bit more personal than just, well, draw me whatever and I'll love it. Right. Like when you do like a portrait of somebody, it's like, this is how I see you. So, you know, yeah, I did that. And then I remember when I was working on this commission, I was doing it, I was streaming in a Discord, and Baka, you know, shout out to BakaArts, good buddy of mine. He comes in and he sees it, and he's like, I want one. And I'm like, all right, dude, I'll make you one. And he's like, cool. So I made one for him. And with Baka specifically, I knew, I was like, okay, Baka at this point, I didn't have nearly as many collectors as him in my like contacts list, but he did. And I was like, Baka knows a lot of people. If he, loves this thing and talks about how much he loves it and makes it his avatar, people will see it and they might want an avatar too. So it's just more advertisement. And also it's a cool portrait for my buddy. So I was like, all right. So I did my Baka avatar, worked like a charm, dude. Funny enough, this was really good timing. He was celebrating his like 10K follower, 10K followers. Here's a tweet. Also, here's a cool avatar that Robbie made for me. Right. So like perfect timing. I was like, oh, it's perfect.
Mm-hmm.
Next thing I know, right. MJData, another, he's just a really good buddy of mine at this point. We're working on a lot of cool stuff together. He's a collector and he's collected a couple of my pieces. MJ saw it. We didn't know each other at the time, but he knew Baka and he saw that and he was like, that is so cool. I want one. So just imagine that keeps happening. Same thing with you, you were talking, oh, that'd be cool to have one, and I remember thinking like RD, this is the Dickerman. He's the origin stories guy. Like everybody knows RD. Like he's got this infectious energy. Like he seems really like just he seems like a prime candidate. And like, of course, like people will probably see his avatar. So like it was a no-brainer when you're like, yeah, let's do it. Make me an avatar too, It just kind of picked up momentum for a while there. And I ended up doing probably about 8 of these. And yeah, like it was a cool little series. And one of the things that when I kind of saw that it was like, all right, this is getting the attention of people. I can't remember who it was. It was one of the bigger collectors. I can't remember who it was, but I remember them sharing the post and being like, then they have a CryptoPunk for an avatar. And I remember them saying, this is a really cool way of like commissioning an artist. And in my opinion, this is cooler than a CryptoPunk because like you're getting instead of getting something that's sort of procedurally generated or, something that it's kind of like almost like a cookie cutter form of art where it's like just slight variations on the same thing. And it feels very machine created. You have like an artist unique take on you. Right. And like, that's a way cooler looking avatar and you're supporting an individual artist. And right there, I was like, I think that's why people are liking this so much is they're just seeing something special, and it is something special, but also like, I mean, yeah, it's just good advertising, man. So like you're hitting a lot of birds with one stone here, and that's why I kept doing it. It just kind of picked up momentum.
It's smart, man. It's very, very smart. For me, I resonate with that collector because I enjoy a good CryptoPunk. Don't get me wrong, but there's something about appreciating an art, like a very unique art style, whatever we want to call it, right? You say you draw weird stuff, you call it, fleshy drawing, whatever it is.
Flesh tech.
There you go. But very much appreciating, I love Robbie's aesthetic, right? And then all of a sudden it's, well, Robbie, now I'm going to have a unique take on you. I'm going to bring you to life. That's another interesting component. It's like, oh, Robbie's going to sit back and whatever he sees in me with the headphones or like, how he's going to do his take on who I am and put some nuances in there and some Easter eggs. That's another fun layer to the entire process. And then seeing that turnaround come back to you where, again, it's not, to me, it is better than a commission work. A commission work is amazing. It can blow your absolute mind, but this is very personal. It's like it's a very personal commission. So anyway, really, really resonated. I loved it even before I had one. And now I've collected myself. I've collected one. It's even better. But to get off the avatars and actually go a step back to let's go super rare Genesis, even walking forward from there. So super rare Genesis, Scouts, right? Scouts goes up first, then you go to the Grasping Well. Take us anywhere you want along super rare specific road about how do you choose those artworks? How do you decide what to lead with? What resonates with you most along that road?
Okay. So like just real quick, I know we're on super rare, but I don't know if you're aware of this. My actual Genesis piece, like in NFTs, was on Foundation.
Foundation. It's true. They were flipped. That's right.
Yeah. I don't know if we should mention that first. Yeah.
Go there first. Go there first.
Sure.
Yeah.
So like the rookie card, whatever you want to call it, of Robbie Trevino is owned by one Jonathan. Shout out to Jonathan. Really cool collector. Jonathan, grabbed my Genesis piece. And I still remember the day I posted that piece because it is that Genesis piece was one of the two artistic, like Robbie. It was like one of those lightning bolt eureka moments, in 2016. I think it was either 2016 or 2017. I think it was like the very beginning of 2017, like January. I had made that piece and then the ritual piece, which is the giants with the long arms that are like scooping up the people. But that fleshy head with a little astronaut jumping in front of it, right? Those two pieces were like Genesis pieces for like Robbie as like a artistic brand. And that's why I chose in that order, the fleshy one first, and the ritual one came a few pieces after, but they just made sense. It was like, that was your like artistic Genesis.
Amazing.
Like brand wise. So it's like, why not make it your first NFT? So I was like, okay. And I remember putting it up on Foundation, and I had gotten into SuperRare. Finally, I'd waited like 3 weeks, which was actually less than like 2 weeks, which is better than some people, because I've heard some people go, I got it SuperRare. Yeah, so some people don't get in, and then some people, when they do, it's like, it's been 4 months, but I finally got a yes. Fortunately for me, it was like a couple of weeks. I knew I was going to get in there, but I didn't want to wait because I saw just the amount of FOMO when I first began this was like, how is this going? This is not going to last. And it really didn't, the initial buying spree. So I thought, I'm going to do Foundation now. And I remember being like, I don't even have a MetaMask. I don't have any Ethereum. And I remember being on a call, live streaming on a call on Discord with like 20 people. And Baka is there walking me through the whole thing. He's going, and he's like, in typical Baka fashion, he's like swearing at me, with love, but he's basically like, you fucking idiot, like do this, do that. And I'm sitting there like, don't pressure me. Like, there's people watching, and like everyone's laughing and having a good time. But basically he gives me some Ethereum to pay for gas, because I have no money. And he's like, yeah, like here's some gas money, make a MetaMask, list your piece. And he's walking me through the steps. I remember very importantly, I remember him saying, like, don't worry about, like, don't pay me back, just pay the next guys. And I was like, all right, I'll remember that. Very important. So I didn't pay back the gas money. I list, and we go, how much? And it's like, well, this is a reserve price. And like, he's like, remember, this is your Genesis piece. So some people were saying, do like 2 Ethereum. Someone was like, do 4. And I'm like, I'm going to do 15 and just see what happens. And everyone's like, oh, Robbie, what are you doing, you idiot? Like, come on, man. And I'm like, 15. And I do it, right? Baka goes, okay. Like, and then he goes, listen, I got a few collectors. I'm going to help you out here. I'm going to send them this listing. I can't make them go for it. I'm just, presenting the opportunity. I'm just facilitating. And I'm okay. He shows it to Jonathan and a few other people. Jonathan goes for it. Reserve price met in 30 minutes. And I was like, did I just like,
this is like your Magic the Gathering moment. Like
a little bit. And like, I didn't want to fall into the trap of like, oh, this is just how it goes. Cause it's not how it goes. It is not how it goes at all. But for the first Genesis piece, like it sold. Well, yeah, it basically started the sold process within 30 minutes of being listed, which was incredible.
Amazing.
And yeah, like not a bad floor price to begin with. 15 ETH, really, really darn good for a Genesis drop. And then from there, MJData grabbed one for, 15 also. Tommy grabbed one for 20, which was the Scouts piece. And that like Scouts sold, I think the Grasping Well sold first, which now we're jumping off of Foundation, because I only did one on Foundation. So a week later, because I didn't want to mint too quickly, right? I wanted to, but I was like, don't do it. Like, don't oversaturate the market. Just space out your mintings. So I was like, I waited about a week and a half. And by that point, I had already been on SuperRare, like officially onboarded. So like a couple of days after being onboarded, I put up Scouts. Scouts didn't sell. It sat there for maybe about 3 weeks, which again, in NFT time, 2 weeks, which is like a pretty decent amount of time. It's not forever, but it's a bit. In between then, in between Tommy purchasing the Scouts piece, which was technically the SuperRare Genesis piece, I become friends with MJ. And MJ and I work out a thing where he goes, you know, you don't really have, you have a floor price on Foundation, but Try Showtime hadn't existed yet. So there was no way to cross-reference your value on each platform. And even then, without really having a floor established on SuperRare, it's still kind of hard to tell. I didn't have one. I just had a listed piece with no reserve price and a few bids. And I was talking to MJ, and MJ was like, look, we worked something out where why don't I give you this avatar and you can pick something from my portfolio that isn't minted, and we can put it up there, and we can do like a batch deal where it's like we lump in both values, but we have you bid publicly. So on chain, I have a floor price and like an established bid history. And he's like, sure, I'll help you out. So we found a piece that I liked. It was that he liked. It was the Grasping Well, and I wasn't even planning on minting it once. And he loved it. And we were like, all right. So we put it up, and that's how that one sold. And then basically a week later, the one from Tommy sold. And then I think maybe one more one of one sold after that. Oh yeah, it was the one for Unsung. And that one sold for 30, which is like the biggest one of one that I had sold. And then there was a nifty drop after that, which, you know, this all kind of, I think, built up to the hype of the nifty drop. And there was a few small drops in between there. Like Baka had his surrogates thing going on, and he had some guest artists. So he grabbed, you know, you've had him on here before, Pete Moorbacher, another buddy of ours, like, and then me and our friend Bjorn, and then Trudy, Baka's girlfriend. Like, so he had some guest artists come in there. So I had done a few things here and there with other projects, but mainly for like the Robbie Trevino one of ones, you know, yeah, it kind of was just, you know, put it out, you know, don't accept like the first few bids that come along, even if they're pretty generous. Like you should know what your art is worth. And I think I do, because I think I have something that's more unique than some of the stuff you see in the space. Like people tend to know it's me pretty much from a mile away. And, you know, because of that, like, I don't want to dilute my value. So like, yeah, there's a lot of FOMO, you know, like it's crazy watching stuff just sell and go and just sit there and watch your stuff kind of sit. But I stood firm, held my ground, took my time, and sort of methodically, when things felt right, you know, put them out. And when a price felt good, I accepted the price. And yeah, I mean, slow and steady basically was my approach, and it paid off, I would say.
Agreed. And now you look at it, and you're on several different platforms. You've had, you know, an amazing genesis on Foundation, but now also several artworks on SuperRare, and then of course the Numinous release on Nifty Gateway, which is really interesting. You were able to showcase the book here. I remember seeing it. I remember it being tied into that Nifty Gateway release very, very clearly. It's fun that you're going to be following that up with a part two. It's also fun connecting it to the grander vision that you have for ultimately, like, the original vision of 5 books, 5 years, you know, now gets expressed in its own unique ways within the NFT space. Very, very, very fun, man. It's
thanks, man.
Robbie,
I'm like,
go ahead.
I was gonna say I see, like, I remember having the Clubhouse talking about, like, during drop 1 for Nifty, talking about this project and saying, you know, basically at some point, I mean, and NFTs is a perfect example of this. Prior to NFTs, I would still say things for years where people go, is it a book project? And I go, it's a book now. It could be an anime one day. It could be a VR puzzle game. It could be anything. It could be a collection of miniatures that you paint, or maybe you model them, rig them, animate them, and play them in a game. You know, it could be literally anything. It could be a product line of toys. It could be merchandise, like swag. It could be anything. And then NFTs come along, and I'm like, it could literally be anything. Like it could be a full blown anime with multiple seasons on Netflix, or maybe on Netflix, or maybe on a blockchain, or, you know, I don't know. It could be literally anything. But it's it's a project that's, the nice thing about personal projects is you can grow them at their own pace. And I'm in no rush. I want it to be done right, not done quickly. So that's why I'm not taking my time with it, but I am, and I'm growing it in my own way, and I'm doing it with a community, and I'm trying to do it in a sort of decentralized fashion that is independent of a specific platforms, right? Because prior to this, you know, you would get told, and these are still good business practices, by the way, for anyone who's thinking of creating their own brand and expanding. Prior to the whole NFT thing, you know, if Instagram deplatformed you, you know, you're essentially, you know, if you don't have like a mailing list, like
Right.
all of your
Right.
following is gone, right?
Yep.
Now you can build an entire Discord community, right? That will, you know, follow you and, you know, buy, you know, community NFTs on OpenSea or Nifty or SuperRare, whatever it is you're doing, right? You can build entire communities around projects and, you know, your brand decentralized. Like, and I mean, you probably could have done this before NFTs, but I've never seen, I mean, I didn't even know what Clubhouse was, but I definitely did not use Discord anywhere close to what I use, the amount that I use it nowadays,
Sure.
because of the NFT space. Like, it was just, I think these were directions that we were heading inevitably, but what happened is between February, March, and kind of mid-April was that timeline was accelerated a lot, like by light speed, right? So yeah, I mean, yeah, like that's, I guess that's the best way to put it, is just like, yeah, it's a project. I'm growing it. I'm continuing to grow it. I would have done this anyway without NFTs, but
That's
it just makes perfect sense to do it with them, I guess.
that's the best part to me. That's the best part. Like my favorite part, or the theme of Robbie Trevino's story to me is you made a decisive turn to do your own thing. It was a tough time, and then you decided, I'm going to do my own thing now. I'm just going to do my own art in my way. And since then, it's incredible to see how things have unfolded. And so how it comes into the NFT space, to me, doesn't feel forced, much the same way that it wasn't forced initially. And the fact that you are evolving it, you know, that what began with that 5-year 5-step plan now may be taking some twists and turns, but it seems to me like it will always have that sense of authenticity to what you want to create, what's meaningful to you. And I think, as you found, and what I firmly believe, from at least from an art perspective and from a lot of other perspectives in life, what means the most to you, what is the most authentic to you, also ends up being the best received from others.
Yeah, I completely agree. You can't, like, when something just is lacking like sincerity, you can always tell. You could always tell.
Yep.
It's, and I mean, yeah, like it made perfect sense. Like I literally haven't changed anything. Like I wasn't, and I'm still not, like, I've never considered myself an NFT artist. And I'm not saying that in like a derogatory word
Sure.
or derogatory fashion. I'm just saying I'm just an artist, man. I've been an artist for over, I mean, pretty much my entire life. As far as I can remember, I can't remember when I started drawing. I can find pictures and stuff with dates, but like, you know, I've been doing this. I've lived and breathed this for many, many years. Like I know, I remember people trying to get into this. Like I've met people that were like trying to learn 3D programs to do NFTs. And I was like, wait. So you're just trying to just become an NFT artist? Like I was an artist before NFTs. I just happen to be tokenizing my work currently. But if you look at the work, there aren't Ethereum symbols or Bitcoin logos. It's the exact same art I've always done. It just has metadata stamped on it now. That's literally all it is. Like I haven't changed anything about me. I'm just using a vehicle, a very obvious and very advantageous vehicle to, you know, forward this project, to push it forward. It's just obvious. It makes sense. It's nothing's changed really. I'm just going, oh, here's the obvious progression in my mind. So.
And that's the beautiful thing about NFTs. I've been thinking a lot about this, you know, recently, but just that core. Like if you strip away all the FOMO and you strip away all the hype and you boil it down to, you know, what is it, right? Going back to the artwork that you created. I think you had even said a little bit something alluding to this earlier in Origin Stories, but when you created it, where do you go with it, right? Where do you go, especially like digital native artwork? Like where do you go with that before NFTs? Well, you can go sell it to a Magic, right? With IP there, and then it gets folded into their IP. You could go work for, let's say, an agency or another brand, then it gets folded into sort of their, let's say, advertising campaigns or their books or their movies or their shows. Or you can push forth and create your own, let's say, merchandise, right? You create your own book, physical book, but that's a whole process to then have, go through that printing process and then and pushed out there, or create clothes or something with it printed on. But the nice thing about physical art, I always point to this up here on the wall, where it's like, if you create something on a canvas, that canvas is saleable. Well, NFTs become that for digitally native art. And that's fascinating. To me, that's fascinating.
Yeah,
to me, that just, it resonates so strongly to me as, I think a small piece, at least, of why we're here.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, art, it's interesting, right? There's a lot of people that will look at, okay, like, so I don't know if you've noticed, but there's like a mixed reception and perception of the NFT space, right? It's
sure.
at least in the artistic community. I've never seen something more divisive as like a subject, something so contentious. Like, I've lost friendships over this NFT thing, and the difference, I think, between me and someone like, say, Baka, who built his following in the NFT space, I came to this space with people completely external to this space, right? I came with a following prior. And what I've learned is a lot of them do not appreciate NFTs. Like, they're very against it. I've gotten a lot of backlash for this. It's understandable, the environmental concerns. There's a lot of confusion too as to whether or not it's like a pyramid scheme, like you're only like only big artists make money. And so, all the other ones that are minting that'll never sell, that's where the scheme comes in. And the people that are incentivizing, through their own success, are incentivizing other people, the smaller artists, to mint and then lose money. Let's hold them accountable. So, like, if you're a person with a following and you're seeing any kind of success in this, you'll get some backlash. It's understandable, but it's obviously not entirely accurate, right? That's some of the biggest artists in this space I've never even heard of and didn't have any kind of following prior to this. They just made the right decisions, were early movers, capitalized on the opportunities they were given, like made the right moves, and like, put in the work, and they grew something. And like, similarly, it's man, I feel like I'm really getting off of the point you were at before earlier.
Oh, good. This is your, ultimately, this is your show, Rob. You can go
okay. Well, all right. So, man, what is the point I was trying to make with all this? I guess I noticed, like, there's a lot of confusion as to like just what the space, like, the concerns that people have. Some of them are completely unfounded, and some of them are very, very logical, but still probably misplaced. I think a lot of the good that we're talking about has been like overshadowed by the bad in some people's minds, and it's a real shame, because the truth is, with or without us, and like digital art plays a significant part of this, but in the grand scheme of things, like, I don't know, just to lash out, to think of a problem and then put a face to that problem, being an artist and not a company, and go, and you shake your fist and you go, the PayPal accepting cryptocurrency now is because of you, artists who minted a JPEG. It's like, no, it's not. They were planning this for a long time. You think those contracts were placed over a couple of weeks? We're talking years of making these deals. Like, this stuff was going to go this direction anyway. We just found ourselves somewhere in the middle of this, and art is such a tangible thing that, like, it is a really good example of like the power of NFTs, and like just kind of the inevitable progression of where all of this media and, like, branding and marketing and things from companies and all that's going to go anyway. Because you better believe by the end of the year, we're going to have some like Mandalorian Baby Yoda NFTs and some stuff that Disney, like all of that. It's so obvious. Like, I heard that like Rolex is doing like NFTs now, as in like, here's a non-fungible token of ownership, like to go with your physical Rolex. I don't know if this is all true.
Well, that's a whole different use case. Like, to me, that's inevitable. All high value items will have accompanying NFTs for
Right.
digital
Like,
proof of ownership.
like
And
it was an obvious progression, right? So it's just one of those things where it's like, I think a few of us happened to find ourselves in a really early spot where we went, oh, look it, you can also use art for this. And like an entire metaverse has sprouted from it. And it's an amazing place to be. It really is a small pocket. It doesn't feel small because we live and breathe it every day. So it's sort of an all-encompassing bubble. But it is a bubble because you go onto the streets and you go, hey man, you heard NFTs? And most people are going to be like, what? Like, what are you saying to me? Are you a person that's talking to me? Like, we're pretty early, but it's very exciting because the potential is just like limitless, honestly.
it is. And you not to not spend too much time on it, but you just touched on the exact premise of the whole Artifacts project. It's digital art and the digital artists who led NFTs forth to the parabolic rise, and specifically those who had broader digital careers and different levels of experience, and essentially, lit the way. Like art really did end up lighting the way for what became the parabolic rise of NFTs. Now we are going to see many, many use cases. Obviously, metaverses have been around for a minute here. They'll continue to be around. There will be larger ones that come in. And then on and on, attachments to Rolexes, ticketing becoming NFTs. Like it's just going to go so many different directions. But art became one of the most significant, forefathers of mass NFTs. I find that so compelling.
I find it super compelling as well. And I want to say that on a purely like artistic, like aesthetic note, I remember when I first jumped into the space and I remember seeing just like to me, it felt like a lot of 3D assets that had been sort of like given like a material shader and then like lit in a certain scene and then a little bit of animation. And like, that was the art, right? There wasn't a lot of 2D stuff when I entered the scene. I remember one of my friends, you know him very well. I've been friends with him for years, Victor Mosquera. Shout out to Victor. I remember showing up to this thing in like the end of February and him being like, oh dude, I'm so glad you're here. Like we need more 2D guys like you. Because Victor is another one of those guys. He's animating and he's doing like, you can tell like there's 3D stuff, but he has that classic 2D, like cell shaded, clean, like line work with fill colors sort of look similar to mine. Mine's not exactly a 1-for-1 like his, but we have like a hand-drawn aesthetic, right? And like, I remember him saying like the two things he said was like, don't change, don't ride these trends. Like we need people like you. And the other thing is like, I from that conversation, I realized like I'm not saying like there wasn't good art before, but with the influx of talent, and I'm not like talking about myself specifically, but just like the wave of new artists that came in from all the different, the concept artists, the illustrators, the photographers, the 3D motion graphics designers, the graphic designers, like everyone, right? This sort of quality of talent that wasn't present before the wave just showed up, like everyone all at once. And I mean, dude, they showed up all at once. Like I remember trying to like describe the when someone goes, what's the NFT scene like? I go, imagine 800 people trying to fit through one door at the same time. And like, that's what it kind of felt like for a while there. Right. And like, but I mean, they all showed up and dude, the quality bar just went up.
Oh yeah.
And like, to me, like from an artistic point of view, I was just like, yes, like anytime I see like something elevate in quality and to that degree, like I was like, dude, like this is art you should be paying for. Like it's getting really good now. Like it's getting really good. And that to me, that was like, and now it's so good that it's to the point that like, I mean, I won't like name names or anything, but like I know a lot of collectors who are, they sold things, they bought things thinking, this was a good bet. And you can't always tell when bets work out, whether they're going to work out or not. That's why you place them and it works out. Sometimes it doesn't. But there were things that went for a lot of money initially. And they're trying to get rid of these things now, these collectors, because like they're seeing, like they've become more savvy. They've become more aware of like the quality versus quantity, or, insert whatever, like however you want to put it, right? It's like now the quality bar has been elevated so high and we've seen just a fraction of the potential of what the space has to offer since we're so early. You realize like just how much it's progressed already in terms of quality. And it's only been like a couple months. And I mean, in NFT time, again, right, that's like 5 years. But like in the real world, you go, it's only been a couple months, but you look and you're like, the space has changed that much.
So much.
Already.
Yeah.
Fuck. Crazy.
Robbie, let's play a game. You ready?
Yeah.
The lightning round. Snap reactions, words, sentences.
Oh boy.
Keep it moving. First thing that comes to mind. All right. And if you happen to get super fired up about something, of course you can hit pause and talk about it a little bit. But other than that, just keep it rolling. You ready?
Mm-hmm.
All right. NFTs.
The future.
Ethereum.
Problematic, but has a lot of potential.
Foundation.
A cool opportunity.
SuperRare.
Something that's been doing it right and is still doing it right.
Nifty Gateway.
A lot of potential, needs some work.
BakaArts.
That's all I got. Just nothing but love for Baka.
For those listening on podcast, that's a double thumbs up from Robbie.
Oh, sorry. yeah. Double thumbs up.
Pete Mowerbacher.
No, I'm just kidding. No, Pete. Pete has been described as my other half. So yes, I'll put it that way. Significant other, like boyfriend, not boyfriend.
Dead Mouse.
I don't know if you can tell by the helmet, but I am Dead Mouse. There's a helmet in my background for those of you on voice only. No. A friend and current collaborator.
The last, chronologically, so that way we don't get into ranking systems, the last piece of NFT art that left you with your jaw, just your mouth open, jaw dropped, stunned at the quality or high level.
God, I forget what his name is. I think it's Frenetik Void. He did a piece on SuperRare. I think it's him. He did a piece on SuperRare that was like, it was a profile shot of a person's head, and then like the brain, the cranium area was hollowed out, and then there was like another humanoid figure floating inside of that. Do you know which piece I'm talking about?
I know it. Yep.
Yeah, that thing is one of those pieces that like I saw the bid history of it and noticed that it took a year to get a bid on it. Mm-hmm. And then when it sold for a lot. And in my opinion, it should have sold for more, because that was one of those things that I looked at. And I remember I just stared at it for a good 20 minutes and I just kind of got lost in it. Yeah. I can't remember the name of it, but beautiful piece.
Yeah, incredible art, artist, a lot of patience, historical patience, and for all the right reasons.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm. The last NFT artwork / artist that you looked at and said, why don't more people know about this work of art or this person?
Jazsi. I think I've mentioned him before on one of your live streams. Jazsi. Everyone go check out Jazsi. Seriously, he is like, I'll put it this way. I remember meeting him for the first time. Oh, for one thing, for some reason, I thought he was a she. Everyone does. Maybe it's the avatar. I don't know. Maybe it's the name. But I saw his work, and I remember asking him, like, what gallery, like, do you show with? Because all I saw was, like, someone who probably has their own solo gallery shows every year. You know what he tells me? He goes, I make cocktails for a living. And I went, okay, well, we're going to work on that. Shout out to Jazsi. Check him out. He is incredible. And I feel like he's worth easily 4 times, if not more, than what his stuff goes for already. Like, he's one of the next big names, I think, in the NFT space.
I love it. Full supporter, both of the art as well as the person behind it.
Yeah,
and
he's a fantastic guy.
Yeah, very, very much has seemed like it for many months now of interacting over digital.
Yep, he just needs one, like, I don't know, 888 or someone just snatch up one of his pieces and put him on the map already. I don't know, but like, he's almost there. I'm telling you, it's just it's like a ticking bomb just waiting to go off.
I believe that. All right, Robbie, tell everyone, where can they find you? Where would you like people to go see you next? I know obviously you have the nifty release coming up in short order here, but where else? account, Discord? Say it.
Yeah. So I'm building a Discord community. It's already got a few people in it. I just rebranded it again, but it's let's see. Right now I'm calling it Numinous Universe. I almost called it the Numiverse, but that was a little too cringy for me. I'm not a dad. I'm not a dad yet, so I can't really make those jokes. But like Numinous Universe, we could probably like link it in the I could probably supply you the link if you just want to like.
I'll link it in the
sure.
the Twitter show notes, and we'll make sure we get it out there. Yeah.
Numinous Universe. What I've learned, like I do have my Nifty Gateway drop, which is expanding the Numinous book series story coming up July 8th. I'm on SuperRare, I'm on Foundation, but if you really want to keep up with the project and Twitter and Instagram, but if you want to keep up with the project, I would say become a part of this Discord because I'll be minting sort of exclusive content, like for people who are, they would need to buy like a specific token. I'm going to be doing some of this through OpenSea, but I'll be minting a token through OpenSea, and people who have this token, who are in possession of this token, similar to like Amir with the NFT guild or swolfchan with his Mitsuki key. It's going to be sort of like a club membership, a really cheap price, but you hold it, you'll get airdropped things, you'll get access to like some of like the much lower, cheaper or collector people who collect and hold my work, collector only, whether it's auctions or limited edition drops or open editions, whatever I decide to do, there will be exclusive content for people who hold this key and are part of this Discord community. But if you just want to follow along and learn about the project, just become a part of it and pal around and voice chat wherever we're hanging out, the Discord would probably be the best place to be, because I've discovered in the short time I've been here that similar to that decentralized mailing list that we were talking about, having your own community, it's always about the community. If you have a strong community, you can go anywhere with them. It doesn't matter what platform, what universe you're existing in. You want to have the community with you. So that's what I'm building. And it'll be devoted mostly to the book project that I'm working on, because that's the thing that people are most interested in.
And the heart and soul of your creative spirit, which is the best, man. So Numinous Universe Discord, we'll link to it. Robbie Trevino, man, it has been an absolute pleasure having you on Origin Stories.
Well, thank you. And I'm wondering if we could circle around really quickly to one last thing. It's an important thing. We didn't really talk about it too much, but it was a big thing that happened to me last year, and I just want to talk about it for a little bit, because it's one of those things that it has shaped everything about me moving forward. And it's basically coming up on 2 days from today will be the 1-year anniversary that this happened to me. And without this event, I don't know if I would have leaned into the NFT thing as hard as I did. I know I talked about it being an obvious progression and all that, but basically, so I've been relatively healthy my whole life. And even now I'm in my 30s, I'm 33. I've never had a cavity or a broken bone in my life. I've been very fortunate. I don't know what happened, but basically over a 3-week period leading up to June 11th, I went from being a perfectly able-bodied person to having horrible digestive issues. I was super sick. I became incredibly ill. I couldn't eat food anymore. I was losing a ton of weight. I had to quit my job that I was working at the time. So this was like around June 11th. And I remember I had gotten my girlfriend, who had, at the time, we're no longer together, but at the time, my girlfriend, she wasn't living with me, but she ended up living with me because of this. She ended up becoming my full-time nurse. She's an amazing human. She basically grabbed me, and I couldn't work anymore. After 3 weeks, I was so ill from this, and I couldn't figure out what was wrong. We weren't sure if it was a stomach ulcer. We weren't sure if it was do you have some sort of like autoimmune disease that's just sprouting up? Like, is it Crohn's? Is it ulcerative colitis? Like, all these medical terms that I had never, my life was art before this. I had no idea what was happening to me. And I just put myself in the hospital. So for 7 days, I was just in the hospital. I remember getting a job offer to work on Star Wars at the time that this happened. BLM was kicking off. So the BLM riots here in Seattle were also going on. This was in the middle of a pandemic. There wasn't any vaccine, right? Like, so all this stuff was happening and it just was insane, right? 7 days, got all the tests, all the testing that you could possibly get done in that amount of time. They didn't find anything. They let me go. I go home. I'm sick for basically this is June. From June to November, I just had tests every week. And I mean, if anyone's ever lived with a chronic illness, like it is, I'll tell you, before life, like life before having a chronic illness and then after, it's very different. It's gotten much better, by the way. But initially, yeah, it was nothing but tests for basically almost 6 months. And they didn't and still haven't found anything. There's no diagnosis. I've had CT scans, blood work, MRI, parasite, stool, endoscopy, colonoscopy, like cameras, like, checking for even DNA mutations, SIBO tests, all kinds of stuff. They didn't find anything. It's amazing the world that we live in, like as technologically advanced as we are, that doctors don't have all the answers. And prior to this, man, I thought life was an episode of House. I thought you just walked in and you were like, fix me. And then the doctor goes, and then they wave a wand and, House figures it out and you're good. Nope. No tests, just lots of pain physically, like I couldn't, I got down to 130 pounds and I'm about 6 feet tall. So that is way too light. And, with the physical hardship with the physical turmoil comes the emotional turmoil, right? Between losing the gig on Star Wars, like I was literally in a hospital bed when they called me and they were like, can you start next week? And I was like, fuck, I can't.
Yeah.
And then just the emotional like turmoil of just you can't eat because it always hurts, like I spent most of my summer on my back with a heating blanket wrapped around my entire waist, around my stomach, because a lot of the pain manifests in my diaphragm. I was losing my vision too, because whenever I'd eat, I'd black out completely, which I guess is like a thyroid response or something. Not really sure. Like it was just kind of a whole systematic failure, and nothing was showing up. And like any time, like the symptoms would jump from area to area. And, all you could do is look at your team of specialists, because you were, at the time you weren't, you didn't have a team of doctors, or you didn't have a GP, right, who kind of kept tabs on you. You had a team of random people, like about 10 different artists, GI specialists, doctors who didn't they weren't talking to each other clearly. And all they would do is just go, well, we can just test stuff and see what happens.
Right.
And that's all it was just expensive tests. It amounted to an absurd, a mind-blowingly large amount of debt, right? And it was crushing. And I mean, I have my student loan debt already anyway. I still have it. I was living on the West Coast. It's not cheap here. Yeah, it just financially, it was like I was basically going into financial ruin. And fortunately, the art community that I was a part of, and I'm still very much a part of prior to this NFT thing, they put together a GoFundMe for me, as a medical GoFundMe. You can Google all this, anyone who's interested. Just Google Robbie Trevino GoFundMe, it's all there. But basically, this amazing community of artists, they pulled together, they got a lot of funds really quickly. And like I was able to cover pretty much all my debt. And it was just this hellish experience of like, I think a lot of times people, they feel like the only way I can move forward from something, whether it's a chronic illness or a simple problem, is I have to identify this thing, give it a name, figure out a solution and solve it. The truth is sometimes you just don't get the answers to things. And that's okay. But I think as someone who operates under sort of I want an answer, I want something concrete, who I tend to operate on like empirical evidence rather than just like a lot of hearsay, but I'm open to both. It was a maddening experience of just going like, look, this might just be your life for the rest of your life.
Mhm.
Like this, you wake up constantly in pain. And I have pain now. Even now, as we're talking, it's not to the level I would say it was a 20 when this started. It's probably a 4 or 3 right now, but it's kind of a faint pain that I just live with now. It's mostly in my diaphragm and my sciatic nerve. But like science has some explanations, not a lot. What I can tell you is I've fluctuated a lot in terms of like body weight over the years, a little bit of body dysmorphia going on there. And I have such a gung ho, all or nothing like mentality that makes me a very unbalanced person, but very good at tasks, which is why I'm really, if you tell me, Robbie, you're going to like work in the NFT space now, I will literally just go 100% in to the point that everything else gets ignored. Same thing with art. And, you know, when I was against art and I was all about doing the other things, right? That's when I became like this fitness fanatic, you know, and I got like, you know, I was basically doing like bodybuilding competition prep level of dieting, you know, and just, it's an all or nothing thing, right? And that leads to like an unbalance. And that's something that I've been working on for a while and I'm much better about it now. But yeah, I think what I've been told is I did this to myself basically unintentionally, but like a holistic team found me and they were the only people during this whole experience other than friends who told me, they were actual doctors who told me, you're going to be fine, which is huge because all you need is a little bit of encouragement in a time like this, right? To be told like, you'll be fine. But the Western doctors, for legal reasons, at least here in the States, they, for fear of being sued for malpractice and being misdiagnosing you, they don't tell you things like you'll be fine. They go, yeah, it could be anything. Or like sometimes you'll literally have conversations like, yeah, it could be colon cancer. We'll let you know. And like, that's that, right? Not very nonchalant, right? Like, and like they, you know, they didn't give me any encouragement, but the holistic people came to me and they said, listen, we're not like, we don't know if you believe in this stuff. We're not asking you to like pray to a tree and like dance around a fire or something, but just like, we don't really believe in the pharmaceutical approach. We'd prefer to do things more naturally with like actual from the earth stuff. And as someone who worked in a hydroponic shop, like for a few years while doing the Magic the Gathering stuff at the beginning of this, I can tell you like, there was a medicinal card, like a medical card, marijuana card, like licensing center. I saw firsthand like the power of like natural sort of like holistic medicine versus like something that's manufactured by a pharmaceutical company that wants to make money. So I took them up on their offer of like holistic treatment. And basically what they said is, we think you stressed out your autonomic nervous system to a point that it got confused. Like you basically malnourished your body for a few years because you just insisted on being fit to the point that you were under eating. You stressed yourself out perpetually because all you do is work constantly. You're always stressed out because you got all this financial debt, because a lot of my money goes to my mother too, because she lives in the Midwest, and this is someone who's only ever been able to live paycheck to paycheck. So like a lot of my money, I live on the West Coast. I have my student loan debt, and now I have this medical debt. It's a lot of money, and then I'm paying for a lot of my mom's bills too. It's just, there's a lot that's riding on me. So I think, it's just a lot of perpetual stress. And we're pretty tough as like sentient, biological carbon-based life forms, but we're not invincible. And that perpetual stress can mess up the systems that govern your entire body's function. The autonomic nervous system governs a lot of digestion, a lot of fight or flight responses. So you confuse it and it's going to start to go haywire. And that makes the most sense to me in terms of what could be wrong, because when nothing's showing up on camera and every one of your body parts looks fine individually, but it doesn't function in harmony, it is the system that controls everything. There's a traffic jam, there's a wrench in the gears, and everything is off now. And all it takes is one thing to create a chain reaction. So without any explanation as to like why I wasn't able to eat food, and I was waking up in the middle of the night with like, I was basically like, for a while there, I'd wake up like suffocating on my own bile backwash and like, stomach acid and all that. I was getting a lot of reflux, and even sleeping, in a sat position would still, like it was all madness. And what they said is the system's out of whack. We're going to teach you a lot of breathing techniques, a lot of meditation, and we're going to give you a lot of supplements, and we're going to get you on a program to try to bring that baseline back. And it took years to get here. It's going to take years to get back, but we think we can do it if you're willing to put in the work. And I said I was, but prior to them meeting me, and this is where this is like something that I want to like share with everyone. And I've shared it online before. I'm pretty open about it. Like, I had gotten to such a low point with this mentally that, I was just done. I was done emotionally. I had to have a friend at one point come over to my house and remove my gun from my possession, because I had planned on using it to kill myself very calmly. And it wasn't some plea for, attention. It was me going, I had a good run. All I see is pain. Like, I don't want this. Like, this is all I could see moving forward. And I know it's so crazy how like all it takes is to go from someone who, prior to this, my thinking was I was going to be like Sid Mead. I was going to be in my 80s, 90s on my deathbed drawing stuff. And to just have it flip like that, because you're not in your right state of mind when you're malnourished, right? And your neurology is all messed up. But also emotionally, you get into a feedback loop. The negative energy just can trap you. So yeah, I was doing all kinds of crazy stuff for like a few weeks there, a good 2 or 3 weeks. I was just in a I'm done kind of way. Like I would hobble around and waddle around outside because I just wanted to get away from my computer, away from my desk when I was healthy enough to get out of bed. And I remember like punching a car that drove by once. And like, that's like PTSD, like veteran like behavior, right? Where it's like, because like I had seen a friend of mine who was in Afghanistan, and he was like picking fights with strangers. He had gone through some stuff, and he just wasn't the same person. And for that month, those few weeks, I was so checked out, and I had this plan. I was going to give back the GoFundMe money. I was going to donate it to something. I was going to, I was making arrangements. And then I started talking to people who had chronic illnesses, who artists that I had admired for years. And never once did I know that they had this horrible, debilitating thing. Like, I have a stoma, right? Like, I don't have, I don't have legs, or, I only deal with cancer, or, I'm blind, or like I used to be able to draw, and now I can't because like I don't have limbs. I'm talking to people about like crazy things that like it didn't define them. Their issues didn't define them. And I was like, man, like if they can like live an entire life like this, surely I can overcome this. Between that and just the simple fact that if I stop now, I'm never going to know what could be. And those two things, just ultimately, when it came down to it, I just decided against it. And then coming out of it, like I said, the holistic team found me, and, like prior to this, the only solutions before the holistic team started giving me options, the only solution that I saw to this issue was a lot of hardcore antidepressants that are horribly addictive, have a ton of side effects, create a lot of chemical dependency. It just things that I never needed. And like, that's all I was being offered by the Western docs. And I was like, I'm not putting that in my body. Like, that's crazy. So I had to learn to just manage the pain, like mentally, physically. I learned how to like meditate and breathe through things. Meditation is a thing I recommend for everyone. It's similar to yoga or like, clean eating. It's something that you've heard of for years, and you go, yeah, maybe, but it's like, no, dude, just try it. And believe me, it's worth it. Same thing. I learned my pain management, and now I'm basically a superhero with this stuff, because like I live with pain every day, and I'm having a conversation with you right now, but I've learned to ignore it. Like, I'm aware of it, but my neurology is elsewhere. So basically, this is like a really like long, I'm not trying to get too into the weeds about this, but it's just one of those things where I I went from being like on top of like my career and being like a front runner in my, and I mean, I'm not a front runner in my industry, but like a very hot commodity, like in terms of like my clients, my client list, projects. And I'm still, I'm still fortunate to be given a lot of those opportunities even now. But I went from like, I'm up here to I'm completely down here. And it happened in the span of about 3 weeks. It all came undone. And I made myself ill because there was so much societal pressure to succeed, to make money. I made myself ill. Like, sure, there's more balance I could have obtained and like learned myself, but without like the requirement to make money and make ends meet, that never would, I don't think that would have ever happened to me. I don't think I would have worked myself into basically a coma, but I did. And the biggest irony about it all was like, I had this desperation to like pay off all my debt, pay my bills. So I worked myself to a point where all the money that I had made to pay off those bills got me so sick that I had a whole new set of bills, and I had to take all that money and throw it at those bills. So it was kind of like this loop of like, you did it all for nothing, almost, in a way. The answer is it wasn't all for nothing, but that was the irony of it, is like, make yourself sick enough to make enough money to pay for the bills while you're sick, and then repeat the cycle, right? And yeah, basically a year ago ish, I was at a point where I was done with all of this, and I thought it couldn't get better. But the beautiful thing is, it did. It got a lot better. And here we are now. I'm so glad that I made the decision to stick around, because I never would have met you. I never would have met people in the space. I never would have seen it. Like, it does get better. Like, there is light at the end of the tunnel. So for anyone, who just is in a really bad spot, or has been, like it's worth it to stick around, like it's worth it. Like, better things come, like you'll get more opportunities, like things, like I never thought like years ago, I never thought Tool, I'd be doing, like artwork with Tool, right? That, like, I wasn't going to art school going, one day I'll work on posters with Tool, never once did it cross my mind. Similarly, never once did I think I would go through this experience that has made me appreciate things as simple as, like, I don't know, birds chirping in the in the trees or whatever, like that stuff used to annoy me. Now I taste food differently. Like, the air smells differently, like carpet. Like, I feel carpet now. Like, you know what I mean? Like you appreciate life so much more. And having that experience, like it changed me. Like, I'm not the same person I was a year ago, and I never will be. I hope that one day the physical pains go away, but I've grown so much as a human since then. I think another important lesson that I learned too, not to get too much into this, empathy, for example. Old me would have gotten impatient and probably cussed up a storm at the driver that cut me off in traffic, right? And I'm still kind of like, that motherfucker, like, as I'm driving, that's just, maybe that's angry Michigan driver, I don't know. But like, new me goes, because when you have like what's called an invisible illness, like people don't see it. Like, I guess in people's minds, you have to be literally wheeled around in a wheelchair to be considered disabled, to have some kind of pain. You have to be like balled up in the fetal position, like visibly ill. The truth is, people are going through all kinds of stuff all the time. You just never see it. Like, you don't know like what someone's pain is or what someone's feeling. You don't know. Similarly to when people yell at you about, making NFTs, right? Oh, you're being greedy. It's like, you have no idea why people are financially motivated. Maybe that money's not for me. Maybe it's for someone else. Maybe I'm going to donate the entire NFT sale. You don't know people's motives. So like, don't, like, you can't be too judgmental. Like, I used to be judgmental in that way. That person that cut me off in traffic, I never stopped to think maybe they were having a bad day. Maybe what's their pain? I don't think anyone chooses to be miserable and unhappy. They're probably going through something. Something probably made them that way. Maybe you should ask them, maybe they're going through a thing. So it's just like this whole experience, again, it fundamentally changed me from the ground up. Like, and I don't want to, like, I'm not trying to spend too much on this, but just like, I think it's an important message for people to realize is like, yeah, like, things happen. things are tough, but like it gets better. It can get so much better, and it did get better. You just have to like wait. You just have to weather the storm, you know. And I'm glad that I made that decision. Yeah, and here we are now. Things are much better now. So
Most important thing to me is you never know what someone's going through unless they're willing to talk about it, right? And to me, it's, you know, you went through all of these formative lessons along that road. What sounds like it was a painful road. I love that the 20 is now a 3 or 4. And what that leads me to believe is that there may be even a horizon line ahead where that's a 0 or a 1. And I hope that ends up becoming the case. But the best, you know, even from the very first origin story was Fred Fuckrender. And he was talking about some, you know, crippling anxiety and rewiring the brain and overcoming that and coming to the other side and still dealing with a lot of different things. And now here we are at the current origin story, you know, 34 origin stories later. And we're at this juncture of you being brave enough to bring to the table and to talk about something that you went through a year and on ago. It sounds like it was a long journey. It probably felt impossibly long at the time.
Yeah.
And it was step over step and doctor visit over doctor visit and specialist over specialist. And you ended up with what sounds like very much the right team for you. And now here you are able to talk about it. And I love the thought. I don't love any of the thought of what you went through, but the thought that I love is that every time someone speaks about something like this, what I find as an observer, and I've shared some stuff as well it's like when the right person, or what feels like the wrong person, but when the right person hears that of you talking now about what you went through then and how it felt horrible many, many times over, but here you are now. We may never know, but there's someone out there who may hear that and need it. And that's, to me, the most powerful spot. That's like to speak back to your concept of empathy. So I love, like, about to wrap the show, and I love that you went there. I love that you went down that road. And I think it's I know it's an important one. And I bet you it's a very important one for one to many. And we may never know, but
yeah, thanks, man. Yeah, I mean, I definitely didn't want to like lead in with all of that, but like, because like I'd rather focus on the positive. And there's a lot of silver linings that have come out of this experience. Just like there's a lot of silver linings that have come out of the pandemic, which, you know, it's been this awful thing for a lot of people for different reasons. But like, it's not all bad. Like there's a lot of silver linings, and it's just, yeah, I think some of the best relationships I've had have formed over this illness. Like people, there's a lot of people have reached out, even like when I shared on All Ships, shout out to All Ships, Dave Krugman. Like I shared this story on his podcast. I'm trying to remember where else I shared this. I think it was, I can't remember what, I've talked about this a few places, and like, there's always at least one person that will reach out to me and be like, dude, this happened, something very similar happened to me. And it's, you know, the talk is never like, just try this. I mean, well, you do sometimes get like, all you need is like a juice cleanse, bro. Or, you know, like insert
you're always going to get that.
Yeah. Insert this BuzzFeed article, or like, I heard it's fecal coronavirus or something like that. Right. But in general, you get people who, you know, you only know them for this one thing. And then you talk to them and they tell you, you know, like this crazy thing. And it's just like, I thought I was the only one who ever went through this. And like, you know, I can relate. And it's like, yeah, like here's a good example. Like I talk to 888 pretty regularly now. And like, it's never about my art. It's like, we bonded over this, you know, like I'm talking about probably the single biggest collector in the space. And it's just about the human condition, you know, like that's how a lot of my relationships have formed in this space and outside of this space. And every time I bring this up, at least I make one more friend, because they went through something similar and they appreciate the fact that I was willing to go there. And I think we should talk about, like, how do we address problems if we never talk about them? I know some people are uncomfortable. I'm not, though. I'll put it out there because I don't want anyone to ever go through what I went through.
And that's, to me, that's art. You know, to me, it's art. And maybe to bring all of this together, and maybe it's a completely random connection, but you know what that makes me think of? It makes me think of you going down the Numinous road and deciding to not only pursue your own art, but deciding to put words to it and to put a story to it and to put a narrative to it and to use your voice alongside the art, right? And have parts and have the what originally started as the 5 part that keeps sticking in my head, the 5-part, 5-year sequence that now may take some twists and turns. And then now you take it over here to the life experience, right? Which is art in itself. It's you going through that dark time and coming out of it, in the process of really, really, really coming out of it. But then similarly, being willing to put words to it, being willing to put your story to it, to come on something like Origin Stories, All Ships, shout out Dave Krugman, come on these mediums, these forums, and talk about it and put it out there. There's a lot of power in that, man. So from both perspectives, for both the life story and the art there, and for the art itself and the story behind it, thanks for sharing.
Sure, absolutely, man. I really appreciate you saying that. And I think I try to do that in every way I possibly can, because whether it's verbally and through video like what we're doing right now, or I mean, for example, if you recall from the first drop that I did with Nifty, I had 2 green pieces. One of them was a monolith and the other was Contemplate, which is like Contemplate's the big butterfly one with like the big eyes. And then a monolith is that big, like vegetative, almost like giant monolithic golem made of like mushrooms. And its arms are like, basically like vials for like this potion, this almost like green healing potion. And its hands are actually corks. It's basically a living, walking potion vat, right? But like that whole green fungal sort of like healing, like shaman carrying like like a giant vehicle that houses like healing liquids and soothing potions and all that. Like that whole thing sprouted from when it was before the NFT space. I'd gotten healthy enough to work again in November. And I mean, dude, we're talking, it was so bad. Like what I'm doing right now, sitting in a chair upright, I couldn't do that for months. Like the most, and it was like, I remember like filing, like, it's so crazy how the medical system here in the States works. Like not having like a wife or someone who has power of attorney as a sick person. I remember waiting in bed like during tests, getting calls from insurance companies to be like, can you pay this? Can you like arrange this online in this online portal? And I'm like, how is a sick person supposed to like handle all this, right? But I had to do it. And so I remember like there was a time where if I was propped up in front of my computer, it was because I was paying an insurance company something, or I was booking an appointment with this specialist online here, right? I couldn't last more than 10 minutes without excruciating pain sat in a chair, right? This is coming from someone who used to spend 8 to 12 hours a day in a chair doing art, right? I went from being so physically ill that I couldn't even like basically send emails comfortably at a computer, to being able to work again, just to produce art, any kind of art, even if it was for just an hour of work a day, is the most I can muster in the beginning. But I began doing art again. And one of the first pieces that I did was that a monolith piece, because in my desperate search to figure out how to heal my body and everything, I started going down the Paul Stamets, like psilocybin mushroom community wormhole, found a whole universe of like the healing properties of like psychedelics. I haven't experienced any of this, but that is what inspired, like I'm seeing people go through taboo natural healing remedies and, experiences to try to fix their ailments. And that inspired a whole green section of my book project. So I basically used my story, part of it, put it into the project and like made it part of the project, the universe, the drop going forward. And, that's how I try to talk about this experience. If I can't talk about it, like what we're doing right now, I'll put it into the art and explain it another way. Whether that completely comes through or not is a different story. But if someone asks, that would be my explanation. And I try to make it as clear as I can in the story. But what I'm getting at is this experience has made me a better person, and it's informed a lot of my decisions moving forward. It's definitely put my career in a whole different trajectory, and same thing with the Numinous project that I'm building. I don't regret that this happened to me. Like it was a crazy experience, but I think I learned a lot from it. So I'm very happy to have come out on the other side. And I'm happy to be here with you all. So,
man, for you to be able to say that, that to me is the powerful thing, you know, that no matter how hard it was, no matter how long it was, no matter how painful it was, but for you to say that, kind of wouldn't take it back, you know, that it informed a lot of who you are today.
yeah.
If it's even possible, man, it makes me more excited to see how your journey unfolds, how the art unfolds, how Numinous unfolds, how the story unfolds.
Yeah. Thanks, man. And thanks again for having me, man. I'm glad to have shared this story with you, and I look forward to the next origin story whenever that happens.
We're bringing it back, man. You will become one of the, there's a couple people in history who have been on a third time, whether it's an origin story plus 2 live streams or something. So it is just a matter of time. We will do it again.
We should do a post artifacts one.
I agree. I agree.
Awesome, dude.
Well, you will have been not Newman, Robbie's representation of Robbie in this case will have been around the globe.
Yeah. And thanks for providing that opportunity, because I never, like, something about seeing your work in Times Square is just still incredibly surreal. So
fun moment.
Excited to be a part of it, man. Thanks so much.
Thanks, man. We'll talk to you soon, Robbie.
Awesome. See ya.